Here's Jerry Jones on the question of, and this is, I'm going to give you a little teaser of my conspiracy theory here. I think that this has something to do with the fact that Dak Prescott has the Cowboys over a contractual barrel with a gigantic cap number next year in the final year of his contract, and he's going to leverage that into another market-level deal. And that's the only way the Cowboys get out of that maze. So, Jerry Jones from Saturday addressing the question of whether or not this Trey Lance trade is leverage against Dak Prescott. Here's what Jones had to say.
It didn't cross my mind, period, about an impact here. Regarding Dak. I know that Dak wants to do anything we can do to improve this team, and we're going to do it. The facts are that the decision to bring in as high a quality of talent as we could, that's evolving, or a young talent that is basically gaining, improving, getting better, that you would be as a young talent. That's something that we've been trying to do, but it's just never, the opportunity seems to be there so often. But we've been trying to do what we did today with this trade almost every draft since I've been drafting.
Now, look, I had not heard that specific soundbite. To say that it never crossed his mind, I mean, how can it not at least cross your mind? It has to at least cross your mind. You've got a quarterback whose cap number next year is $59 million, who needs an extension and the signing bonus that goes with it and the reconfiguration of the cap dollars that were pushed from prior years for the money he was given then. I said it then, and I'll say it now. The 4-year, $160 million deal that Dak Prescott did is dramatically better than the contract Patrick Mahomes did because it paid him well, it had great cash flow, better than Mahomes in the first 4 years, and it brought him back to the table. It forces the issue. It forces the Cowboys to do something. And one of the things the Cowboys may have to do, and I said this on this show or somewhere, maybe I wrote it, I can't remember. But at some point I said, the Cowboys have to ask themselves the tough question, whether or not they're going to keep giving market value contracts to Dak Prescott if he's in a position to leverage them. Are they going to continue to do it, or are they just going to say, Dak, we're moving on? You know, it's kind of like the Jared Goff argument from 4 years ago. When the Rams were ready to make him the highest paid player in the league at the time, and Sean McVay dismissed the concern that Jared Goff has taken them as far as he can and they shouldn't pay him $33 million a year. And then they did. And 2 years later, they hot potatoed him out of town for Matthew Stafford, tucked a one into the deal to get it done. Please, please take this contract off our hands. We'll give you a first-round pick to do so. The Brock Osweiler dynamic. At some point, the Cowboys need to do that with Dak. If he's not going to be, and I know, look, I'm not going to quibble whether it's Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott or Matthew Stafford as the second best quarterback in the NFC. But the NFC is the far lesser conference right now when it comes to the quality of the quarterbacks. All but Jalen Hurts out of the top 10 right now are in the AFC. So where does Dak fit into the overall hierarchy? Does he deserve market-level deals? Does his play, do the team's achievements merit giving him another deal that's going to be $52, $53, $54 million a year to replace the one with the $59 million cap charge next year? That's what this all comes down to. So I think Trey Lance is all about protection against the possibility they can't work something out with Dak. But the idea that it never crossed your mind is such a stretch at throwing dirt on the path. It's laughable. When he says it never crossed my mind, either he is totally incompetent as a general manager, which some would say is the case. I don't. He's lying about the fact, I believe. He's covering up the reality, I believe, that Trey Lance is there as a possible replacement for Dak Prescott, if it all works out. And they're happy to pay him $6.3 million, and they're happy to have the fourth-round pick gone as an insurance policy against Dak continuing to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze them for more and more and more money as he parlays this current contract into an attempt to get another one. That's what I firmly believe, and that's why I think the Cowboys made the move.
Well, yeah, and frankly, even though I put on my conspiracy theory hat, like I think that what you're saying does make a lot of sense. And in that same vein, it doesn't really make sense that Jerry Jones would say, "Oh, it didn't cross my mind," unless, he's just trying to, I don't know, say something that sounds good because, you don't want to have this as a talking point, right, when it comes to Dak Prescott. But the thing is, Mike, if Dak Prescott plays well this year, if the Cowboys make a deep playoff run this year, then shouldn't the Cowboys be happy to pay Dak Prescott a market value contract? Because that's what's going to be the thing that leads them there in the first place. I understand that the NFC is not as strong as the AFC, but if the Cowboys win the NFC East, which is certainly a possibility this year, if they get farther in the playoffs, if they make it to the NFC Championship game, then Dak Prescott has earned, in theory, the next contract, right? So, I mean, like, and who knows, is it really a good insurance policy if we already think Trey Lance is bad and we don't really know what he can do? I mean, like, so, like it's one of those things where, yeah, you can do it, but if things go well, then it doesn't matter.
Myles, if Dak Prescott takes the Cowboys to the NFC Championship, you realize, don't you, the last time the Cowboys went to the NFC Championship, you were 4. That's how long it's been.
Okay, but
so
like, where are the real
that's a hell of an if.
I know, I understand that, but
I know.
I'm just saying that, like, okay, maybe they get to the divisional round again. Okay, then they lose to the 49ers because it seems like that's what always happens, right? But I'm not.
Let me ask you a different question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you a different question. Long term, would you rather have Dak Prescott or Micah Parsons?
Well, I mean, why can't you have both? That's not an answer to the question.
What if you can't? What if you can't have both? Who would you prioritize?
I would probably. Well, because I think of Micah Parsons as like a near Aaron Donald type game-changing defensive player, and to me, Aaron Donald is the gold standard of that.
You're answering your question. You're resisting. You're resisting the obvious. You're resisting saying Micah Parsons because you know it bolsters my argument.
Well, no, because I know how important the quarterback position is, and I think that not saying that is diminishing the value of Dak Prescott, who I think is a very good player. So, would you rather have very good quarterback that is perennially getting you into the playoffs, or would you rather have game-changing defensive player who helps solidify that status because of what he can do on the defensive side to help supplement what you're doing to score points? I mean, that's what.
Who's easier to replace? Who's easier to replace? Well, one is slipping toward middle of the pack at the most important position on the field. The other is moving toward the top of the pack at the second. Yeah, he is. He's slipping. He's slipping toward the middle of the pack. I think that's a fair take. Given what he's done the past couple of years, he's regressed down toward the middle of the pack. He's gone from guy who was fringe top 5 to guy who is between 10 and 15, in my opinion, right now. He has the power to turn it around. I'm a big Dak Prescott fan, but we got to be realistic of where he fits in relation to others. And it may not be that he's gotten worse. It's just others have gotten better. That's what happened to Russell Wilson. Yeah. He didn't get worse in his tail end of his time in Seattle. Others got better. So let's say there are a bunch of guys out there who are really good now. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Guys have gotten better. Dak has stayed the same. Relative to the best, he's slipping. Micah Parsons is rising at the second most important position in football. So the calculus for me is I can't find another Micah Parsons anytime soon. That's generational. I can find another quarterback that can maybe be as good relative to the rest of the pack. I can at least try. And if my choice is I have a guy that's a little bit less, or maybe a lot less than Dak, but I'm paying him a hell of a lot less. It's the argument that people in Washington were making the second time they tagged Kirk Cousins, and he was making $24 million at the time, which was a hell of a lot of money just 6 or 7 years ago, and Colt McCoy was making $3 million. There were people in the front office who were arguing there's no way in hell Kirk Cousins is 8 times better than Colt McCoy. Let's just keep Colt McCoy at $3 million and let Cousins go. So that's this whole analytics thing. That's why the running backs aren't getting paid. Everybody's putting numbers on the value of the player and what it takes to replace him. What's the replacement value? So my point is this. Unless Dak Prescott is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, top 5, why are you giving him $55 million a year? And the answer is he's got us by the ears. We got no way out of this. He's dragging us around. We've got no power because of the contract we gave him when he was one of the best 5 relative to the rest of the quarterbacks. That's the mess they're in. Plain and simple. He's in a position to tell them, this is what you're going to pay me. You want to get out of this cap hell and have enough money to pay Micah Parsons? There's one way out of it. There's one way out of it. One way to create the cap space to pay Micah Parsons, and that's to take my $59 million, reduce it to $20, and along the way, my average value is going to be $55 million a year. They know that's coming, and they need to have an or else to it. Firmly believe that. Now, I don't know that it's going to work for them, but I think that's why they did this with Trey Lance.
Well, yes, and what I think what you're saying makes sense, right? I mean, but these are like kind of two different questions, right? The would you rather pay Micah Parsons or Dak Prescott versus, what do you need to do to prepare yourself to make sure that you have an option at quarterback? And again, if that is the case, then Trey Lance to me is not really all that great of an option, at least based on what we know from what he was doing with San Francisco so far in his career. Again, we don't know how things can turn out, how he might, develop in that building over the course of the year, how whatever he could do on the scout team where he's mimicking and emulating other quarterbacks may or may not help him, how just getting a different set of voices in his ear may or may not help him. But to think that, you could go with a Trey Lance and that he's going to be at some level, a 1 tier, maybe 2 tiers below Dak Prescott, who has been a consistent, I would say, starting quarterback for a number of years. I don't know that that's a choice that I would really want to make.
Well, and it's a choice the Cowboys don't want to have to make. They'd prefer to keep both. But the problem is if Dak's approach is going to be, and this all goes back to the Cowboys blowing their opportunity to sign Dak to a reasonable deal after 3 years. But they didn't. Mm-hmm. They squatted on the low-cost 4th year, and then they tagged him for 1 year. And it was as they recognized, if we tag him the second time, we start down the Kirk Cousins path, and this guy's gone. Because if we tag him a third time, it's a 44% raise over what the second tag was. We just can't do that. And then he leverages that into a long-term deal. We just have to cry uncle. They kept waiting, and they kept waiting, and they kept waiting. And that's one of the reasons why we always say, if you have a guy you want to keep, don't wait. It's never going to get cheaper if you wait.
Bengals.
So the Cowboys waited. The Cowboys
baby.
waited. Exactly. The Cowboys waited. And they allowed themselves to get into a position where Prescott could state his terms. 4 years, not 5, not 6, not 12 like Pat Mahomes. 4 years. And then I'm going to be right back at it. And this thing's going to be structured in a way that there's landmines planted in this contract where it doesn't matter if I'm not a top 5 guy anymore. If you want to keep me, you got to give me another contract where I tell you what it's going to be. It is so unlike the Cowboys to be in a position where they got somebody else telling them this is how it's going to be. And Trey Lance is their red button to stop the ride. You know how on all those rides where you got a kid, if the kid's screaming or throwing up or whatever, they hit the red button and it stops the ride? Trey Lance is their red button to stop the ride if this Dak Prescott thing turns Jerry Jones green and he's about ready to throw up on the tilt-a-whirl. Is that a thing? Tilt-a-whirl? Sounds like a thing.
I think so. I'm not an amusement park guy, but yeah, I was not expecting you to stop there and just hand it to me with that. Like, oh my gosh, what an image. Jerry Jones turning green on the tilt-a-whirl. Oh my God.
Well, that's where I think this is. And they're not going to admit it, because if they admit it, once you start down that path, okay, if you say it crossed my mind, you're beginning to entertain the reality that you got screwed at the bargaining table, that you did this to yourself by waiting too long to engage, waiting too long to sign, and agreeing to a deal that has a fuse that is getting closer and closer to the bomb. And that bomb could keep you from securing Micah Parsons long-term, because I guarantee you, as soon as this regular season ends, Micah Parsons is going to be knocking on Jerry Jones' door saying, I want my money, I want my money, I want my money. As he should be.
As he should be, yeah.
But that's what they're dealing with. That's what they're dealing with. So that's why I think they got Trey Lance. Let's hear from Dak. Here's Dak on the addition of Trey Lance to the team and whether or not he was given a heads up that the Cowboys were bringing in another backup quarterback.
I mean, obviously, I understand it's a business. That's a first-round talent, and you're always trying to make your team better. But that was the front office, so we're going to welcome him as we do any teammate, and hopefully he makes us better, and then we're going to continue to get back at it and know we've got one goal as a team. I can't say that I necessarily expected it, no. I understand that that's business. I understand that they're probably on a timeline. They need to get something done, and as I said, he felt like that strengthened this team, and as I said, ready to welcome him, and I mean, we knowing the strength of the quarterback room that we have, honestly, right now, I mean, my heart and my mind is with Will, and so it's a tough situation, honestly. Love that guy to death over there. Plays his ass off. Comes in, prepares the right way each and every day, and I mean, as I said, we're gonna welcome Trey, and that's what you do for a teammate. I mean, we're excited. I'm excited. I'm always there to help somebody, help a teammate. Very selfless person, so that's not going to change by any means, but my heart's with that guy over there right now.
Look, I don't know how they do it on other teams. I can't imagine if there was a backup quarterback on the Chiefs roster that Patrick Mahomes had a strong affinity for. Love that guy to death, as Dak said. If there was a guy like that, if the Chiefs were going to make a move like this, I think Andy Reid's going to give Patrick Mahomes a heads up. You know, probably. This gets back to something I say time and again. You want your starting quarterback to be kind of like the supervisor on the shop room floor. He's got one leg in both camps. He's management and he's hourly, right? But then when it's time for the manager's meeting, you close the door in his face and you don't tell him what's going on. And he just finds out when the rest of the guys who punch a clock find out. You can't do that. You either treat that guy like a member of management or you treat him like just one of the guys. It's the Aaron Rodgers complaint in Green Bay. Their attitude was, you just work here. This is a you just work here moment for Dak Prescott. You got a guy you like, got a guy you really like. Hey, and the message is, well, Dak, that's what you get for not redoing your deal. If you would have redone your deal. Not they're going to say that to him, but that's the implicit message. Will Greer's gone because you were too stubborn in the offseason to work out a new contract that would have reduced that cap number next year so we can sign Micah Parsons, so this is what we had to do. See, it's all on you. Again, they're not going to say it out loud, but once you start scratching the surface, that's the message. We're doing this because we don't have certainty with your contract, so we needed somebody else that we could maybe turn to in the event this relationship goes off the rails.
Yes, and I think, again, what you're saying makes sense. It's just, to me, like, man, like, that's the guy, you know? Like, it reminds me of what Brady said about somebody. Like, you're going to turn to that guy? You didn't say guy? Yeah. I mean, like that, but like that's really, like, because if that's the case, that's my reaction if I'm Dak Prescott. Like, what has this guy done? I mean, really? That's your argument? Okay, that's fine. Let me go out and let me do what I do. And then you're going to have to pay me because you're going to see that I'm the guy that you need here in this situation. So that sounds like the attitude that he's going to have, right? You know, we're embracing Trey, but, you know, he says really nice, good things to say about Will Grier as a teammate. That's also well and good. But I think that Dak Prescott knows how critical a season this is for him for setting up his future, financial and otherwise. It just, that's the way I see it, at least.
Well, and before we take a break, remember this. And I'll say that I don't know who made the decision within the Dallas Cowboys organization to give up a fourth-round pick and to take on the full Trey Lance salary for the next 2 years. But Jerry Jones is the guy who wanted to take Johnny Manziel in 2014 and 2 years later was trying desperately and furiously to trade up so he could take Paxton Lynch the year that Dak Prescott fell into their laps. So this has not been a team that has shown high-level ability to spot great quarterbacks. Prescott fell into their laps. Lynch ended up being a disaster. Manziel, we don't even need to explain what happened with him. Tony Romo is the only great quarterback they've had post-Troy Aikman, and that was a Bill Parcells thing. That was Parcells and Peyton found this guy when Sean Payton was there as an assistant. And when Peyton became the head coach of the Saints, first thing he tried to do was pry Romo away from the Cowboys. Romo hadn't even started yet, and the Cowboys are like, no. And I remember hearing 20 years ago, 2003, 2004, hey, they got this guy Romo they really like. And I'm like, who the hell is Romo? And it was undrafted, and they developed him, and it was a Parcells thing, but it wasn't Jerry. 20 years later, they're still trying to find a guy that Jerry deliberately targeted. Prescott's a guy that was just like, oh, he's there in the fourth round, and we need a quarterback. We better go ahead and take him. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think it adds a little spice to the Cowboys season and a little drama, a little intrigue for America's team. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.